Today we're going to be doing our crash course into vector basics. Now we're going to be utilizing this same worksheet from the last lesson talking about the interface just to help remind you of the different elements that I may be talking about along the way. I am in my advanced toolbar, and on the right I do have my layers panel open, and that's where I want to start today. So before you begin anything, you need to look at the layers panel real quick, and you'll see that we have this worksheet area and this is locked. If you're confused as to what this is, hit the white arrow and you'll see that it's basically this entire worksheet. I want you on the work area and it should not be locked. So make sure that is not locked and that we can work on this workspace. Now we're going to go down to where it says Artboard 1 and 2, and this is where we're going to begin working. Now before we do, we need to talk about some shortcuts that are going to help you out along the way. So the first one is Control or Command plus on your keyboard. That's going to zoom you in. It'll zoom into wherever your mouse is pointing. So you can zoom way into this document. To get out of it, hold Control or Command and tap minus. And that will zoom you way out of this document. You can go all the way out until it's a little speck on your screen. Now, as we zoom in and out, you may notice this gray area that shows up. That is your paste board. You can put anything you want there to just kind of save it for later, or you can be kind of working in that area. But if you were to save this document, the only thing that's going to show is in that white box in the middle. There is a lighter gray area out here, and that's just to show you your borders. Now to zoom into it 100%, Control or Command 0, and that'll bring it to full screen for you. Speaking of full screen, F on your keyboard will get you a full screen option. F again will make it so that you have no tools, no interface at all, just your document. F again brings it back. So those are just some basic shortcuts to help you along the way. There are shortcuts for tools as well. So let's hit V on our keyboard. V gets us our selection tool. Our selection tool is our black arrow. This is our main tool in this set. You're going to find yourself using this tool more than any other tool. Your other selection tool is called your direct selection tool. A is the shortcut for that. You're going to find yourself using that a lot as well. So get used to the idea of V and A. Go back and forth so you remember those two. Next is P. P takes you to your pen tool. That is the bread and butter of this program. You're going to find yourself using it a lot as well. The last one to kind of look at is Z. Hit Z, that'll get your zoom tool. Now the zoom tool works with a scrubby zoom, meaning I will click, hold, and drag to the right, and that will zoom me in. If I click, hold, and drag to the left, it zooms out. So if you will, zoom into the background, any of this orange area. Zoom in as close as you can. And I want you to notice at no point will you see pixels. Vector design does not get built using pixels. There are no little squares making your overall image. Vector design is built on paths and shapes using anchor points. So we're going to look at that today so that we understand that a little bit better. Just so that we have a clear understanding of what I'm talking about, go up to where it says opacity right here and zoom in on that. Those squares are pixels. The only reason you're seeing pixels here is because this is an image that was brought in. This isn't vector work. So vector work is clean close up. Rasterized digital work is not. It's pixel based. So there is a difference between these things, and we want to focus on vector graphics. So zoom in on Artboard 1 here so that you've got this white area right here kind of big in your screen. You can see what it looks like. Now we're going to start with some very basic shapes today. And if at any point I say something you're unsure about the interface, feel free to look around so you know what it is. And that tool I'm using right there is holding the space bar. That gets me my hand tool. So first we're going to start with the basic shape of a rectangle. M is the shortcut for your rectangle tool. I'm going to make sure I have my properties panel visible so I can see it. And I'm going to notice that it's got a fill and stroke. Over here in my toolbar, I notice I've got fill and stroke here. Now when I click, hold, and drag a shape, it makes the square that I'm attempting to make. But notice it comes in with a white fill and a black stroke. Why? Because that's the default that I already had set. Double click on this color picker right here and choose a different color. you'll see that it changes the color of that rectangle. Over here in your properties panel, double click on that color for the stroke and choose a different colored stroke. You'll see that changes the color of the stroke to whatever you want it to be. So now why do I need to know this? Because every shape and every item inside of this program is made up of very simple vector shapes using strokes and fills to color them. So you need to know how to move and manipulate between these things. So right here on the stroke, I can push that stroke up, I can make the size bigger, I can make it smaller. Whatever kind of floats your boat as to how this shape looks. So I've made my shape, but now I want to alter this shape a little bit. I want to do something different with this. And I can use this same shape tool to make this bigger, smaller. I can rotate it by hovering just along that corner, and I can rotate this shape. I do struggle to move this shape though, so I can't like click and move it very easily. If I get my black arrow, my selection tool, V is the shortcut, I can now click on that shape and move it. And it gives me this bounding box around the edge, which allows me to do all of the same things that I was just able to do. So make this shape small and put it up towards the top. We'll get it out of the way for the time being. Good. Now I want you to grab that rectangle tool and make another rectangle for me. Now notice that when you do, it comes in the same color and the same stroke. But this time I don't want any stroke on this. So where the stroke is over on the right hand side, I'll click on that and I'll look for the option that says none. It's that white box with the red dash. That says there is no stroke here. And I'll change the fill to be a different color, whatever color I'd like. And looking at this, just so we're aware, there are options of how to change your color. So if you don't like this swatch look, you can click on the color mixer and move it this way. There are gradients right here. You can feel free to turn it into a gradient if you would like. In fact, I will, and I'll leave it as that. Click on any of these gradients down here. I would pick on the radial or the linear one of these two, so that you can kind of see what that does to your rectangle. Now, once I have my shape here, I want to manipulate the corners of it. I want you to notice in the corner of each one of these points, there's this little rounded shape, this little circular shape. And if I click on that and hold, I can round the corners of this shape. So that gives me this little rounded edge. Let's get my black arrow again. V is the selection tool. Let's shrink this down. And I want you to notice that as you shrink this down, the roundness stays the same. So if you shrink this down too far, it's going to turn into an actual circle. Do that, move that up to the top for me. Good. Now let's grab our shape tool again, our rectangle tool, and draw another rectangle. Let's change the fill to a different color, whatever color you would like. Now we've been looking at the selection tool, but now I want you to look at the direct selection tool. A is the shortcut. Notice your shape looks different between these two. So I'm going to zoom in here just so we can see it. When I'm on V, I have a bounding box around the outside. This allows me to grab these points and pull them in. When I hit A, I don't have a bounding box, but I still have these points on the corner. These are called anchor points, and every shape in Illustrator is made up of these anchor points. I can manipulate, change, alter, and create these anchor points using different tools. So let's look at what we can do with that. All of them are currently selected, meaning if I move one, I move all. But if I click on one, it stays blue, all the others turn white. While it's blue, if I click again on it, hold and drag, I can manipulate this shape to look different. Do that on two of these anchor points. Make it look however you want it to look. I don't care. Now once you've got it, you'll notice that you still have in some of these sharper points, when you have that anchor selected, that little circle shape. Now if I have that anchor selected and I want to round just that corner, I can do that by clicking and dragging in just that one corner. So try doing that on two of your corners. Drag in those points to round them. There are a number of ways to play inside of Illustrator, and there's a lot of things you can do with it. Now if you notice that little blue piece that's right there, Illustrator does do some funny things sometimes. That's not a shape. I don't even know why it's there. It'll be alright. There it goes. It disappears. So I'm going to move this shape up again. I might shrink it down a little bit if it lets me and move it into place up here. Now, we've been talking about basic anchor points and sharp points because we've been using rectangles. But this time, let's go to the ellipse tool. Ellipse is another word for circle. So hit L on your keyboard, get that ellipse tool. And I want you to create an ellipse shape. Now notice that ellipse means oval, really. It's making an oval of some form. If you want to make a perfect circle, add shift to your click, and that'll make a perfect circle for you. Good. I'm going to hit V, and I'm going to move that shape up a little bit, and I'm going to zoom in on this one again. All right, I'm going to hit A on my keyboard to get my direct selection tool again. I want to see the anchor points. Now, just like with the square, I have 4 anchor points here. But why is it that the square is square and that this one is circular? There's a big difference between these two, but they only have 4 anchor points. If I click on an anchor point, I see it. These little lines coming off are called handlebars. And these handlebars represent the curve between these anchor points. So if I were to grab this handle and make it taller, you see it stretches that curve even higher. If I were to go down, it makes the curve lower. If I were to go in, I can bring the curve into the middle. So these handlebars adjust and alter the way this shape looks. Now to create a perfect circle, all of these handlebars need to be the same width as each other. They need to be the same size so that they all look right. I want you to grab these handlebars with your white arrow, and I want you to very much mess up how this looks. I want you to alter the way this looks entirely. Make kind of a weird squiggly shape, whatever floats your boat here. All right, and you'll notice that as you move one handlebar, the handlebar on the other side of the anchor moves as well. There are ways to make this not happen, but we'll look at that as we go. Good. So I'm going to move that shape out of the way too. I'm going to go back, and this time I'm going to grab my ellipse tool one more time, and I'm going to make another circle. Now change the color. I believe in changing the color on each one, so that way you're kind of seeing how to change that color and you're moving along with this. So I'm going to hit A again, and this time I'm going to click on the anchor point itself. I can still manipulate the anchor point itself, moving it in and around as well. If I click on that handlebar by itself, I can move that handlebar to be shorter and longer than before. I want you to move one anchor point in, and then I want you to take the handles of that one that you're bringing in and put them right back on top of that anchor point. And you'll see that makes a nice sharp point. When you've got that, you'll notice this little curvature comes back out. Grab that and smooth that out. Give it that kind of bean shape, right? So this seems basic, right? We're just manipulating very basic shapes. But that's what it all comes down to, is how can I take very basic shapes and manipulate them to create the look that I want. So down here below, I want you to look at some of your other shape tools. Now the flare tool is in a game all its own. I would avoid that for now. If you want to see what it does, I can click and drag. It makes this wild flare shape. Takes a little bit to figure out. As you see, my computer's just sitting here thinking about it for the longest. I wouldn't mess with it personally. But play with your star tool for a second, see what you can do with that, your polygon tool, and make a couple of more shapes down here, and then manipulate how they look so that you have your own custom shapes. When done, let's move over to the right. Now, how can we take these very basic shapes and do more complex things with them? A lot of the most famous things in the world were just basic shapes. If you look at the Nike swoosh, that is a very simple shape, but it is a world-renowned logo, right? How can we make another logo that would be world-renowned in a very simple couple of shapes? So let's look at how we can do it. First, we're going to start with our rectangle tool, and we're going to create kind of a taller rectangle right here with no stroke. Now, once we have this, you can color it whatever color you would like. I'm going to stick in kind of the green world for mine. You pick yours. So we've got our rectangle here. I'm going to click on these top 2 points with my white arrow, my direct selection tool. I'm going to click on one, hold shift, and click on this one on the right. That selects both of them. Now when I do that, I see these little rounded points come back out. I can round the top of this just like that to create this little bulletish shape, this arch shape. So give me that look right there. I'm going to hit M on my keyboard and I'm going to get my rectangle tool again. I'm going to create another very simple rectangle over here on the left. And I'm going to use my white arrow again, grabbing these little curves to round that point out. You know what we're going with yet? I'm sure you do. So just like any other program, holding Alt or Option will allow me to duplicate this shape over. If I hold Shift, it'll duplicate it towards the right without going up or down. Good. I can duplicate it again, holding Alt or Option, bringing it down here to the legs. Good. So you can see what we're creating, the little Android logo. Very simple shapes to make. That was not complicated. The last little bits are just a couple of white shapes. So I'm going to get my ellipse tool, L is the shortcut. I'm going to click right here, and this time I'm going to hold Shift and Option after I click. Shift and Option or Alt. When I do that, I get a circle out of the middle. Now you don't necessarily have to do that. You could hold Shift and just make your circle, move it where you want. Over here on the fill, I'm going to change this fill to white. I'm going to make sure I've got white as my color. Good. So I'll duplicate that holding Alt or Option to create my second eye. And I will use a rectangle to create the white line right here at the neck. So again, very basic shapes, right? There's nothing complicated in what we just created. So one last touch are the antenna that we're missing off the top. We want to make those. And those are really two shapes put together. So to make one, I'm going to go over here on the side and I'm going to make one tall rectangle. I'll hit I, that gets my eyedropper tool, and I'll click on that green to make sure I get the right color. I'll hit L on my keyboard and I will create a perfect circle right above this. Good. Now I need to select both of these because you can see my circle is not lined perfectly with that rectangle. It's a little bit off to the right. So I need to select both, and that brings up a concept we need to talk about. So V, get your selection tool. To select multiple shapes, I can click on one, hold Shift, click on the other one, or I can do what's called lassoing, clicking, holding, and dragging over top of it. You see that little dotted line going around that. Now you don't necessarily have to have everything selected in order to get that lasso to work. You just need to touch both shapes, just a little bit. So if I make a lasso down here, this micro little lasso, it'll select both things as long as both are being touched. Over in my properties panel, I have alignment options. So I want to horizontally align this to the center. That makes sure my circle and my rectangle are aligned. Alignment tools are key to making clean graphics, so use those often. Now these two shapes are not connected, they're separate. I can move one without moving the other. So while I have these both selected, I want to look over in my Pathfinder panel, in my properties panel under Pathfinder, and I want to look for the option that says Unite. It's the very first one there. When I click on Unite, it is now one shape. It put those two together. Good. So I'm going to move these over. I'm going to rotate the antenna a little bit so that it looks like that. And then I'm going to duplicate this. But to duplicate this, I would hold Option and drag, but it goes the same direction. So I want to do it a little differently. With it selected, I'm going to go to Object, Transform, Reflect. And I'm not just going to reflect it. I'm going to make sure it's vertical. I'm also going to hit the copy button, not just OK here. That makes a copy of it. And I can drag that over as well. Pretty cool, right? Now, let's talk real quick about something that will throw you off. When you're making things like this, you see the white right here in the eyes and on the chest. If I were to drag this shape off to the paste board, just so we can see it, you'll see that white area is white, but I don't necessarily want that. I want to cut a hole through these places. And I also want to connect these shapes down to this shape. So let's look at this again real quick. With that shape selected, I'm going to click on the white area. I'm going to hold Shift. In fact, I'll click on all the white areas, holding Shift. And then I want to click on the body. Now under Pathfinder, the second option says minus front. Now the white areas are on top of the big green area. That means they're in the front. So if I minus the front, this is going to take those white areas and punch holes straight through my document. Bam, good. So that works well. But I also have these antennae that are connected to this head, but are not actually connected. Same's true for the legs down here. They're not actually connected. The arms, even though they're not touching, would be separate entities. I can move them. So the last thing I'm going to do is lasso everything. I'm going to select it all. And I'm going to go back to my Pathfinder and click Unite one more time. And it puts it all together in one thing. If I click on this, it all moves as one now. As I move up, look at the eyes. I can now see through the eyes. That means that they're cut through, which is key. Nobody wants to put this logo on their business card if it's got white eyes. Maybe their business card is black. It should have black eyes. So that's how we can use very basic shapes, very basic vector fundamentals to create our overall look. So what did we talk about today? We talked about anchor points. We talked about handlebars. We talked about building shapes using color and stroke. We talked about how we can align shapes using our alignment options. And we talked about how we can put shapes together or cut shapes apart using our Pathfinder panel. I threw a lot at you today, and I'm not expecting you to remember every detail of everything we talked about. We're going to come back and look at all of these things in greater detail as we move forward. So that's your daily dose of design. And if you found this tutorial helpful in any way, shape, or form, please feel free to like or subscribe to the channel. That always helps me out and keeps the content flowing. It also helps build your creative toolbox. So thank you so much, and we'll see you in the next one.